About 4 years ago, when I was 16, an incident occurred that now makes me check if the door is locked several times before going to bed. That day, I invited a friend to stay over. At the time, I lived with my parents, but they had gone to stay overnight with friends, so there were 3 of us at home: me, my older brother, who was 17 at the time, and my friend. My brother hung out with us for a while and then went to bed because he had to get up early in the morning. My friend and I were in my room, watching YouTube and chatting. Around 2 a.m., my friend started to get sleepy and quickly fell asleep. I, however, wasn't tired and continued watching videos. Suddenly, I heard a noise outside the house. I didn't pay much attention to it since the neighbor's cats often climb onto our roof at night, and the roof is covered with sheet metal, which makes a dull metallic sound, just like the one I heard then. Then, about 5 minutes later, a barely noticeable shadow flashed past the window in front of which my monitor stands. It happened so quickly that in any other situation, I would have thought I imagined it, but 2 suspicious events within a few minutes seemed strange. Immediately, I got up from my chair and went to the front door, and damn it, neither of the 2 locks was locked. Then something happened that almost made me shit myself. After locking both locks, I decided to turn on the light in the yard and look through the peephole. When I looked through the peephole, there was a damn face. Startled, I shouted, "Crap," and jumped back from the door. Outside the door was the face of a man, about 25 to 30 years old, standing close to the peephole. I looked through the peephole again to get a better look at the stranger, and then he spoke. The stranger asked me to let him in, saying he needed help, but you know what was the scariest? His emotions, or rather, the complete lack of them. The stranger's words sounded very convincing. There was genuine fear in his voice, as if he really needed urgent help that his life depended on, but his face showed absolutely no emotions. Nothing but the movement of his lips, a completely empty gaze. I was incredibly scared. I just stood there looking at him. With each passing second, he begged to be let in even louder, with even more fear in his voice. Suddenly, I heard footsteps behind me. When I turned around, I saw my brother, and I didn't immediately notice how the stranger had fallen silent. My brother asked me, "What are you doing?" I replied that someone had climbed into our yard. After that, I looked through the peephole again, but there was no one outside the door. What the hell? I thought then. I told my brother that I had just seen a man outside the door and that he was asking to be let in. He believed me and said that he too had seen someone at the window but thought he had imagined it. After that, we turned off the lights in the house and started looking out the windows, trying to find the stranger, but there was no one there. Suddenly, a loud scream came from my room. From empty, it had turned predatory. My brother and I rushed into the room and saw that the man was standing at the window in my room, with the same emotionless face, but his gaze had changed. Despite the fact that the light was on in the yard and it was dark in the house, and he simply couldn't see us, he looked straight into my eyes. I was frozen in terror, and then he showed the first and only emotion. His face stretched into a wide grin. He raised his hand to the level of his face, and in his hand, he held a huge fucking knife. Slowly bringing the knife to the window, he began methodically tapping the tip of the knife against the glass, continuing to grin eerily. At that moment, my brother was already talking to the dispatcher on the phone, calling the police. I don't know why we didn't do this earlier. For some reason, neither of us thought to call the police until then. As soon as my brother finished talking to the dispatcher, we ran into another room. None of us wanted to stay in the room where the crazy guy was standing outside the window. The police showed up approximately 10 minutes later, but by then, the yard was empty. The stranger had fled. Using our descriptions, the police were able to create a sketch of the unknown individual. The officers contacted our parents and stayed with us until they arrived. Despite the fact that the sketch of this psycho was circulated throughout the city, he was never caught. I am so grateful to my intuition for making me check if the door was locked, and to my father for his caution. There are bars on every window of our house. Who knows what would have happened if they hadn't been there? Several years have passed, and I had almost forgotten about this incident. But recently, when I was already living separately from my parents, I returned home late at night. Turning on the light in the hallway, I noticed that the door to my room was slightly open. I was sure that I had closed it in the morning. With my heart pounding, I slowly approached the door and looked inside. The room was dark, but I distinctly felt that there was someone there. Turning on the light, I saw that there was no one in the room, but on the table lay a piece of paper that hadn't been there before. On the paper, it said, "I'm back. You didn't lock the door." Since then, every night I check all the locks and windows, and every time I close my eyes, I see that face in the peephole and hear the tapping of the knife on the glass.